We share. Oh, take a
Hi everyone, my name is Marion Itohan. I'm a single mom. I'm a mother to a 3-year-old toddler. Keeps me busy and on my toes most of the time. I'm going to talk about, about my husband. I'm going to talk about how I met him and, events following that. I remember it was in 2008 when he came into my class, direct entry. And well, I wouldn't say I'm a shy person. I'm more of an introvert in a way. Because, well, sometimes I like to go out, but sometimes I just like to stay inside. So I don't have a lot of friends, or at least I know I didn't have a lot of friends. So I ran into him. He was my classmate, and then we became good friends. From there, we became best friends. But it wasn't until 2015, after our final year exams, that we started a relationship, and eventually by early 2017, I was married. It was awesome, as you'd expect, getting married to your best friend. But we had our own challenges. I remember, I just finished my house job, and he was still doing his house job. So of course, I wasn't working for the first 3-4 months, and financially, it was a little bit rocky. And I remember after we left Owo, that's Ondo State FMC Owo, back to Lagos. I had not done my NYC then, so I had to take some, from jobs, like post-internship jobs, but not full medical jobs. So, the pay wasn't so good. And in the midst of all that, by 2018, I got pregnant with my daughter, and, being broke, being pregnant was a funny experience, because we didn't want to tell our parents that we didn't really have so much, so we had to work with what we had. But that's not where the story began. By August 2018, I'd had my child, and by 2019, I'd gotten a better job. By 2019 March, I'd gotten the job, but it wasn't until April 2019 that I resumed. So it was awesome. It was like finally things were looking up. I'd gotten this job, and I was going to be paid more. He was working in a fairly good place, so we began to make plans. The job entailed that I had to move out of Lagos to Ogun State, which is a good about 1.5 hours away from where he stays. So I started this job April, and I remember it was middle of May when my husband called me that he's been having diarrhea. Diarrhea is kind of normal in this part of the world, so it wasn't something we thought so much about. I thought to myself, well, you'll be fine. I mean, you're a doctor, I'm a doctor, you know what to do. 1 week after, or 2 weeks after, said he had to admit him because he was pulling about 20 times a day. It sounded really strange. But at that time, I wasn't really thinking of anything sinister. It was just diarrhea. So they gave him antibiotics, and he said it was fine. But the strange thing was the blood workup, all the tests they did were normal. So he came home, and I assumed that he was fine. I think at that time I was on call. I couldn't travel to Lagos to see him, so I assumed he was fine. It wasn't until, I think we're having a conversation some days after, and he said, I'm better, but I still have to pull like 4 times a day. And, sometimes it's usually in the mornings. By that time, I had started gastroenterology posting. And, ideally, usually it's until you've had diarrhea for over 2 weeks that you begin to worry that, okay, could it be something more? Should you do extra test? But it didn't just sit well with me. I kept saying to him, I think you need to do an extra test. I think you need to do what we call a colonoscopy. We need to take a look at what's going on. And initially, he refused. The typical, I'm fine. It's something I would do also, I'm fine. I don't see any reason why I need to, check further. But I kept saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't know why, I'm just not, it's not normal. You shouldn't be having pains in the mornings. And I told him later, and I said, you know what, it's likely going to be normal, but just do it. Let's see what's going on. And then he said to me, we can't afford this right now. I think colonoscopy was going to cost about 70,000. This was 2019. We're just starting out. And I still remember calling my mom and saying, we have a bit of a situation. I think my husband is ill. I think he needs to have a colonoscopy, but he doesn't want it because we don't have money, and I don't know what to do. And my mom has always been awesome over the years. She's always stepped in. So, and I said, I don't want it to seem as if I'm asking him for money because he's likely going to turn it down. So what are we going to do? So what she did was she made a call and booked the test. And I called him and said, I booked this test. I think you need to show up. So he sorted out everything for us. And I remember it was May, sometime in May, towards the end of May, when I received that call. call. I just closed work. And we had this agreement, way before when we were friends, that no matter how bad the news is, you should not keep the news from your spouse, no matter how bad it is. It's one of the things we had practiced over the years, and we had said to ourselves, even if I'm dying or you're dying or you have a very crazy diagnosis, you are under obligation to tell me whatever it is. So I know when he called me, he said, I've had the test done and the doctor found something. Then I said to him, okay, so what did the doctor find? And he said, they found just something like a swelling, just a swelling. And I remember telling him, I said, we're both doctors. You can't tell me, it's a swelling. I've been in this test before. I know that they have a conclusion. They have something to say at the end. Is it likely cancer? Is it not likely cancer? You can't keep telling me it's just a swelling. So he said to me, okay, so the doctor thinks it's a tumor. But they are not so sure it's cancer yet. And I said to him, what exactly are they thinking it is, So he said, okay, so they think it's cancer. And I was thinking to myself, this cannot be happening to me. I was saying to myself, it's just barely 1 year after getting married. He doesn't smoke, doesn't have the risk factors, has no family history of cancer. This cannot be happening to me. And he tried to cheer me up, tried to say things like, just calm down, take a deep breath. And normally whenever I'm pushed to the wall, I tend to get upset. So I was saying to him, I'm okay, don't tell me I'm not calm, and he was trying to say, I can hear you breathing over the phone, you're breathing too fast, just calm down, you could have an accident. And I'm saying, no, I'm fine. So I said, okay, so you know what, we're going to do surgeries, we're going to take it out as soon as possible, because he was telling me that it was caught early. They don't think it has spread, it's not a big deal. And I was saying, we're going to take it out, we're going to take it as soon as possible. And I began to make plans. So I was leaving work that day. I called my mom to tell her what happened. I called my pastor, and I found myself struggling to stay sane. I still remember holding back the tears as I was trying to get home. I got home and my daughter's nanny was asking me, are you okay? And I said to her, I'm fine, I'm okay. I got to the room and I just started crying. And the first thing that I thought of was, why? Why is this happening to me? And I think it's a question we tend to ask ourselves when things don't go our way. This question of why? What's going on? What have I done wrong? Why is this turning this way at this point? But then I told myself that, okay, so it was caught early. I've seen this happen before, that you have chemotherapy. I got advice from my consultant and he said, you should be right as rain. It's not a big deal. Just ensure he completes the chemotherapy. So the chemotherapy, the surgery rather, was fixed for, he was supposed to see the surgeon at work, and it was fixed for 2 weeks. And the plan was I was going to take leave and join in Lagos and be there doing the surgery. But a week after, I got a call because he's working in a hospital, and the other doctor is my classmate. So when I got a call from my classmates saying, I'm under obligation to inform you that your husband was admitted, but it's not a big deal. And I found myself saying, we know these things. We know when we call spouses, what is going on? I said, no, you just need to be admitted. And I said, you need to tell me what's going on. You need to tell me the truth. Like, I call people too, and I say, oh, sorry, we just want to tell you stuffs, okay? And he said to me, well, he went into some obstruction. He just went bad, and he started having this very bad abdominal pain. So, but he's fine. We're doing pain meds, and I just thought I should let you know. At that point, I was on call, and I think for me the struggle was I was on a 48-hour call. I'd done just 24 hours, and I had to keep seeing patients. And the only thing in my mind then was I needed to travel. I just knew I needed to travel, and so I was struggling through work. And Monday morning I had a presentation. I had to show up and smile and present. So that weekend was quite a struggle for me, but I traveled and got to see him. And while I was there, I was trying to make some phone calls because the surgery was they were still insisting that they were going to wait an extra week. And I felt, that's turned for the worse. We need to do the surgery now. So I tried calling everybody, all the surgeons I knew, and they kept saying things like, well, you might probably need to wait for an extra week. We need to work him up. So I thought about everything, and I said to myself, sometimes when you rush things, you could make a big mistake. So you just need to calm down. And so he had the surgery. Thankfully, they didn't see so many, the cancer had not spread to any organs. It was just regional, like they would say. And we're confident that, okay, he was going to have the chemotherapy and he was going to be fine. So I think it was July, towards the end of July, because he had to start the chemotherapy a month after after the surgery. So it was towards the end of July when he had his first oncology appointment. It was a Wednesday and I was at work, so I couldn't make it. When he came back from the oncology appointment, he called me and said that the oncologist said that each course was going to cost us about 200,000, and he was going to have it every 3 weeks. And for 6 months, that's 8 courses. So I did a mental calculation. I said to myself, that's 2 million naira. Where am I going to get 2 million naira from? It was a discussion we had, and at that point I was feeling very helpless. I thought of, okay, even if my mom gives me money, my brothers give me money, and everybody gives me money, nobody's going to give me up to 2 million. That's quite a lot. And at that point, I began to feel like I was drowning. And while I was speaking to him, he made a statement. He said, well, sweetie, don't bother about it. What's case scenario? I'm going to die. I'm just going to, put my house in order and know that I'm going to die eventually. And, the kind of me, the characteristic of me, it's the kind of person who would not give up. And I said to him, don't say stuff like that. Don't ever say stuff. It doesn't matter how, we're going to beat this. So we started making phone calls. We called friends that were close to us. And he didn't want it to be on social media. He didn't want it to be on our class page, because he said that holding on to faith for him was already difficult at this point, and he didn't want people to call him and start, telling him I'm sorry and stuff like that. It was going to make things worse. So I said, okay, so we're just going to call people that we know can keep this to themselves and see what we can do. So I started making phone calls, and I think the first miracle that happened, that I experienced, was the fact that people started sending money in. It was surprising, because one of the things that's quite shocking is when you have people that that would reach out and care about other people. So by the time we're 3 months into the chemo, we already had about 2 million. We had everything down, and another miracle that happened was the fact that somehow the drug rep for the company that was selling the therapeutic agent had a batch that was about to expire, but had not yet expired, that they were going to sell for about a third the price, because each of the vial was going to cost us 92,000. He was going to need 1.5. So it was really, really something that was amazing. And I realized that if I could focus on the good things that were happening, it was easier to survive this. There were times when you begin to feel pressured, you begin to feel tired, you begin to feel overburdened because you had to go to work. You were expected to give your best at work. You were expected to be a mother at the same time. You expected to take care of the house because, funds were going into chemotherapy. You were expected to travel. And every weekend, I had to travel to Lagos. So every weekend, I pack up my daughter and the nanny and be on that road, travel on Friday, come back on Sunday. So, at some point, it was beginning to tell, the stress, stress, the emotional stress, the physical stress. But in all, it was something that was doable because we had, awesome people around us. My mom, his family, church, my brothers. It was just awesome to have all these people praying for you, giving, and being so kind. Okay, so he completed the chemotherapy, didn't have any side effects, thankfully. We had some, the vomiting, the nausea. Those were the major side effects he had, but he could still go to work, though he had to contract out his calls, but it was still okay. And he was beginning to gain weight. So of course we had every reason to hope that he was coming out of this. And I remember one particular day, I think it was in November, November 24th or thereabouts, when he went for one of his chemotherapy sessions, and I got that call again, that call that we don't like, that call we get from the hospital, and they say things like, okay, so we had to admit him. I was informed, or rather, he told me himself that he had been throwing up so badly that at some point he was vomiting from his nose, he couldn't breathe, and he thought he was going to die. So, and here was I in Ogun State, here was he in Lagos, and he was just, I was not sure if he was going to make it that night. At the same time, he didn't want me to tell his parents because he knew that his mom was going to really, really, freak out. So he told me you need to manage this information. And at the same time, my daughter was coughing and throwing up. So I just began to feel like this is terrible. How am I going to breathe? How am I going to survive this? How am I going to come out of this? I had his mom, his dad calling me from Lagos. Okay, we've not seen our son tonight. Do you know where he is? And I had to say things like, oh, he just had to stay in the hospital overnight. He's fine. It's not a big deal. I had to handle that. I had to sort a lot of things out. But thankfully, Looking back now, I could always say that somehow, God's grace was always there to help me every step of the way. So December, he completed the 6 months chemotherapy, and we were excited, we're ecstatic. At least he completed the IV. It was going to complete the tabs in January, so we're excited. And that was when we wrote the story and put it on our class page, and it felt good to tell the story and to tell the story about how good and how awesome God has been. So at that point, I started discussing with him that he needed to move his job to Ogun State. I was tired of having 2 houses. I was tired of, crossing this road over and over again. It was time to quit where he was and come down to Ogun State and start working where we were, so we could begin to make plans, long-term plans. By January 20-something, I think he had written the interview to get a job in Ogun State. I knew he was going to get a job. Then he started having these terrible abdominal pains. It didn't make any sense to me. Initially he said, okay, it's when he eats plantain that he notices he has abdominal pain. And, I checked and I realized that some of the side effects of chemotherapy could simply be, when you have upset tummy, tummy is really easily upset. So I didn't think so much about it. But we discussed with the oncologist, and she said, okay, let's have some tests run. Because after the chemo, she had told us that we're not going to run some tests until months afterwards. And we have some tests run, and the results were not in agreement. The CT says that, the cancer is still there, it's not gone anywhere. It's still there and it's staring at us in the face. But the colonoscopy he did says felt it was just an inflammation, that was not a big deal. So the challenge we had was, okay, so what was the next step? What were we going to do? At this point, we were exhausted. He was exhausted and I was exhausted. And so we said, okay, let's give it time and repeat this test again. And then in the time we gave it, he began to get worse. The abdominal pain got worse. So by the time we repeated the test, it had spread so much, and my husband told me he's tired. He doesn't want to have another surgery. And I still remember having a conversation with him at work, and I said, you have to promise me that no matter what goes on, you will not give up. You would follow this through to the end. You're going to do whatever surgeries you have to do, whatever radiation, whatever it is you have to do for my sake. So he agreed. And the interesting thing about him is, if he gives his word about something, he keeps to it no matter how tired he is. Because I know the last phase, he got really, really exhausted, got tired of being pricked everywhere, of receiving so many drugs. Okay, so by March, we were back at Lutz. And at this point, I was mentioned that being admitted in a government hospital is very stressful. I did not know how bad it is until my husband was at Lutz. It was very, very stressful. Okay, so we are back at Lutz, and we thought it was just an in and out thing. Do the surgery, and next to 3 weeks you're out, have another round of chemo, radiation, and you should be fine. When I started knowing that, okay, this just might be worse than I thought, was when we had a second opinion at Lagoon Hospital, and the doctors examined him, and the way they looked at us like, well, sorry, this is like the end of the road, like this is far gone. I kept telling myself, I'm not going to believe them. I'm just not going to believe this. I'm not going to take this. So he went to Lutz. He stayed in Lutz for an average of about 2 months, and in that 2 months, I was coming from Ogun State virtually almost every day. I had to be on that road. Thankfully, my mom would drive me maybe around 4 visits, and she would take me back in the evening, and we were doing that almost every day. In fact, every day. I only had a break on Sundays, and we had people praying. And he had the first surgery, and after the first surgery, I still remember standing in front of the theater waiting. Surgery was supposed to take about 2-3 hours. Surgery started around 6, thereabouts. By 11 p.m., the surgeon was not out. Everyone was getting really, really concerned. My mom was trying to be calm so his brothers wouldn't get really concerned, and I was thinking to myself, this is not right. This is like 4 hours, what's going on? It was still past midnight that the surgeon comes out and comes over to talk to me. And because I have a personal relationship with the surgeon, and he was been one of my teachers some years back, he said to me, this is bad. This is like the end of the road, okay? And both we could do chemo, radiation, we could do this and that, but we're going to have to create a hole through his skin into his intestine so he can pull out through a bag. We're going to do the best we can. And I think he was going to do the best he could to sort this because he knows me. Okay, so after the surgery, he eventually had a complication from the surgery. He now had pus abscess in his abdomen, and at some point we thought he was going to die at that point because he passed out. He had a cardiac arrest. They brought him back, So it was a very, very tedious journey from then on. And one of the days I remember during the lockdown. Then the lockdown met us while I was in Lut, and the lockdown was another story. It was a story for another day. I remember during the lockdown, I was at Ikorodu. The lockdown met me at Ikorodu, so I couldn't go anywhere. I can't remember the day of the week it was, but again, I got an unlisted number call me, and it said to me, okay, your husband would need oxygen. And I said to them, okay, so hook him up on the oxygen. The doctor said, well, we can't hook him up on the oxygen because you have to pay for it. I told them, well, I'm about an hour or so away, and if he needs oxygen right now and he really needs it, I would pay for it, but he has an ATM card with him. Could you take his ATM card and, pay for it, please? The doctor said, no, it's not ethical. We can't do that. I said, okay, can I transfer money to you and then you pay for it? And he said, no, it's not ethical. We won't do that. And I said, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't have a car, and, he needs oxygen. We know how important oxygen is, and he's going to die if he doesn't get oxygen. And then the response I get is something like, well, we find a way to sort it out. So I remember that morning, when I heard that news, I sat on the floor and I just cried. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know who was going to help. There was no one. So after crying for a while, I called my mom and I said to her, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. She said, calm down, what's going on? After explaining to her, she was on her way to work. She did a turnaround and she drove like crazy. Drove crazily to Lutz, got the oxygen, and when they were delaying, she went, she virtually ensured that oxygen got there, went and even almost dragged it herself. Okay, so I was able to breathe easier, but this, of course, that meant I couldn't start the Ikorodu anymore because I needed to know what was going on, and I needed to be where there's a car that can take me where I need to go. So I had to move over to Ogun State, back to my mom's place in Ogun State. Then they informed me that I needed to do another surgery, that apparently there was pus in the tummy, they needed to go in for another surgery. This time he was really ill. All these, of course, were bills, all these were piling up, and after telling me he needed to go for another surgery, they said he would need ICU after the surgery, that the ICU at Lut was full, so we needed to get a private ICU. And so we started making phone calls. One of the ICU said they were going to charge us 1 million naira for 3 days. The other one said 500,000 for 3 days. At this point in my account, I don't think we had up to 100,000, and this surgery was going to be that afternoon. So I had another problem. What am I going to get 500,000 from? And I think that was when at that point, I felt I'd reached the end of my rope. Now, in all this happenings, we didn't tell his mom because we didn't want her to get really concerned. At some point, we had to tell his dad that this was what was going on, but we didn't want to tell his mom because she's hypertensive, and he had specifically mentioned that he didn't want his mom to know at this point. But when things were beginning to turn the other way, and his mom was getting really worried that she's been trying to reach her son for weeks and she's not been able to reach him, at some point, she tried to video call him, and he had to stand up from the hospital bed, get to a place where there's nobody around, just to pick that call and say, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm doing great. So we started a WhatsApp prayer group, which to this day, I think that's one of the best things we've done, because the encouragement, the prayers, the people that were praying around the clock, it was really, really encouraging. So we started a WhatsApp prayer group, and people kept sending money in. So at this point, I spoke to him and I said, we are going to have to inform the class. At this point, I can't handle this on my own. We're going to have to call in more people. I know we don't want to tell people, but right now I'm exhausted. So we decided to inform more people. I don't think at this point we had informed the class. No, we hadn't. I just called more people in class, told more people at work. So thankfully, he had the surgery and he didn't need the ICU. What the surgeon did for me was to leave him in the theater in the recovery room overnight so that they could watch him and we wouldn't need the ICU, which was good. But then we still had more bills to pay. The antibiotics were expensive. At some point, his blood cells started crashing. I think the cancer had spread to his bone marrow. The oncologist saw him and said he wasn't fit for chemotherapy or radiation. And so we kept going downhill from there. In all this, anyway, I didn't believe he was going to die. I just kept telling myself, God was not going to do this to me. God was not going to do this to me. Like, me and God have had a conversation about this over and over again. All right, so basically, we haven't seen him every day. I think it was early May when became less conscious. And so the surgeon had told me that this was terminal, that he was unlikely to go home from here. But I just didn't want to listen to that. At some point I told him, I said, the surgeons think that you're going to die, but I don't believe it. I feel we're going to fight this, you're going to come out of this. And I still remember when I got that news. In fact, I didn't even believe it when I got the news. We had scheduled a vigil to pray for him. So that day, because I was always going to the hospital every day, and the days I was tired and didn't want to go, my mom would tell me, you need to go. You are the one person that encourages me, the one person he listens to, you need to go. So it was a Thursday, I think. That day, because we're having the vigil to pray for him, my mom did not want to drive to Lut and then drive back for the prayers. So we didn't go that day. And sometimes I thought myself, maybe I should have gone that day. We didn't go that day, and he had gathered for the prayers when we were informed that. No, in fact, before we went for the prayers, it was about 2 o'clock when his brother called me and said he had stopped breathing. So I said, no, that's not right, and then we started praying, and I called the brother back, and he said, oh, he started breathing again. At that point, I didn't know it was just, they didn't want to get us worried. They didn't know if we were on the road or we're driving. So they just wanted to, control the situation. I just took it as, okay, he's breathing now, that's fine, that's good. So it was later on that they told me, that he had passed on. But at the moment they told me in the night, that was around 7, 8, it didn't register. I just told myself, this was their news. I don't really care. Like, I'm going to go to Lut tomorrow. I'm going to see him, and I don't care if he's dead, he's going to come back from the dead, he's going to get up. I think when it became real for me was when I got to Lut, and I got to see his body at the morgue. And at that point, I just told myself that I'm going to pray. He's going to come back from the dead. My brother said, so if you had gone to heaven, would you want someone to bring you back to this crazy world? I thought about it some more, and I said, well, not really. I wouldn't want to come back to these problems in this world. But it got really real for me when I came out from that morgue. If I'm going to describe the experience, I would describe it as, I felt as though somebody reached into my heart and brought out my heart and squeezed it. It was, if I was going to describe the experience, it reminded me of maybe a scene from a vampire movie when someone just dips down into your heart and brings it out. Nothing was real anymore. Everything became so difficult to comprehend. I felt like I was drowning, and I did not know why I felt that way. It was as though my brain was trying to comprehend what was going on, and it was coming up empty. So I remember at that point at Lut, I had to decide that, okay, I couldn't go back. My mom wanted to take me back home. I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to pick calls. So we decided, okay, you know what? At that point, said, okay, you're going to go to this person's house, and that's where you're going to stay. And throughout the ride home, I was just confused. I found myself telling myself, okay, this is not happening to me. This cannot be happening to me. I think the only thought I could hold on to was the fact that it was mango season and I needed to get mangoes for my daughter. So I kept saying, you need to get my daughter mangoes. You need to. I don't know why that was, but that was the only thought that was coherent, that, I just need to get her mangoes. I need to get her mangoes. And over the coming days, it became more real. It also became, I had more questions than I had answers. I remember the day, because they wanted to bury him the next day, and I just wanted to sleep. So the day of the burial, I woke up in the morning and I was just crying. I was telling myself, I don't think God loves me, because if he loves me, he wouldn't let this happen to me. And I called my mom and I said to her, I don't think God loves me. And she was saying, God loves you, the Bible says. And I said, I don't want to know what the Bible says. I can tell you what you're going to quote. I can tell you where we are going to get the scriptures from. But I want something practical. I want you to tell me why you think God loves me. I don't want you to tell me that the Bible says. I don't care what the Bible says. I didn't know at that point that she was worried. She was really worried, because it was later on that I realized that she had, called my pastor. Can you get through to her? And, in as much as I really appreciate what people were trying to do, they were trying to encourage me, but I got to hear a lot of things that were really insensitive, though I don't hold it against them, because I know they were trying their best to say the right things. You would have people call in and say things like, right there, why I'm crying, why it's just a day after he's dead, and they're saying things like, don't worry, you're going to marry again, just relax. And I find myself almost saying, you think my problem is marrying again? Or people call and say things like, I'm pretty sure that, whatever happened is the devil. And I say things like, after all my prayers, it means the devil is more powerful than God. So I had people say things that, or people call because they want to know what happened. They just called and like, oh, we heard what happened, and they were spoiling for a story, and I was getting angrier. So one thing I did was I switched off my phones. I wasn't calling, I wasn't being calls from anyone, I wasn't talking to anybody. I shut my mom out. I was only listening to one friend, just one friend. And I didn't know she was concerned until I learned later on that she had called my friend and said, she's only listening to you right now, please, whatever you can do, just help her. So, and the reason I was listening to that one friend is because she's lost a brother earlier to cancer. And I felt she would understand, what it's like to pray for something and not get it. So I would just call and we would talk. And okay, so I write normally for Facebook once in a while. I write articles. So I think it was at that point when I felt like why would this happen to me, that an article idea dropped, and it was the perspective. And as I typed the article, I didn't even know what I was typing. I was just writing, because writing for me is therapeutic. It makes me feel better. So I was just writing, and after I was done writing, the perspective came up. The perspective of the fact that sometimes things happen and you don't know why, but if you look at it in the grand design, in the big picture, it seems like it's good even when it's bad. Okay, and that was so the write-up first made me feel better, and it was also a way for me to announce to my Facebook friends and everyone that this is what's happening. And I remember as I was typing that article, someone came around. One of my family members had called a friend to come around to see if she could make me feel better, and the first thing she said was, "I understand," and I got really upset. I look back and I think maybe I should apologize for this over the years, but I got really upset and I told her, "You cannot understand. You just go. You cannot understand." And I think we get so used to things like that, saying, "I understand, it is well." Some of those things ring hollow. They're kind of empty sometimes, and sometimes it's better just to stay away from stuff like that. So having to deal with the grief afterwards, the first thing that hit me was, okay, so you've lost a best friend, you've lost someone that listens to you, that encourages you. Because, growing up, I also struggled with low self-esteem. And so you have someone who encourages you round the clock, and this person is suddenly gone. So what do you do? Where do you start from? What am I going to do? And at that point, there are a lot of irrational decisions that are coming. I thought of, I'm going to quit my job. I'm done, And I had my brother say to me, don't think about that right now. You need the money, take a deep breath. And, you take decisions as it comes up. At that point, I'm thinking, okay, so I have a daughter. What am I going to tell her when she starts asking me hard questions? Because I lost my dad earlier when I was in SS1, and and my sister was 2 years when I lost my dad, and she had questions. What am I going to tell her? Where am I going to start from? How am I going to explain this away? And I needed to also deal with perspective, because in Nigeria, sometimes when you're going through issues, you have people come up with their own ideologies on what's going on with you. You have people say things like, well, some people assume you did something wrong. I heard that. Or your forefathers did something wrong. Some people will say things like, all sorts of things that are things you struggle with. So by the time this happens, you have to struggle with your faith. I had a choice. Was I going to walk away from all I believe? Because somehow there's this narrative of Christian faith in Nigeria that makes it seem as though you shouldn't go through troubles when you're a Christian. And that if you go to troubles, there's something wrong with you. Is it that you're not praying enough, or you've done something really bad? So I had to ask myself, okay, so this has happened. Does it mean that all I believe is a lie? Am I going to walk away from all this? Or am I going to find out what is true about the Christian faith? What does the Christian faith really teach? And I didn't want anyone to cloud me with their own ideologies. I didn't want people to talk to me, so I wasn't picking calls. I didn't want anyone to, come up with their own idea. I wanted to find this for myself. And so looking back, I think I'm always thankful for the friends that will call and just talk about the hard questions that people shy away from. Later on, I began to realize that people were not comfortable around grief. At some point, you say things like, "Oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm missing my husband," and they say things like, "It is well," and they try to shut you down because they feel like you're just raining on their parade or something, or they're not comfortable. They don't know what to tell you, so they try and shut it down. So I had to learn that this was something I had to handle on my own. I was going to have to work it on my own, because if you say it out, people just say things like, "It is well," and they try and change it up because they think you need a change of topic. But they don't realize that in changing the topic, they are minimizing, or they are ignoring your feelings, and it hurts some more. They have people call. At some point, I had to stop answering people, and they say things like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "Well, he died." You have people call because they want to have the scoop on the story. So they are calling to find out what happened. And I have people call because they don't realize that they are trying to make it seem like it's your fault. They are saying things like, okay, so did you try this? Did you try that? Did you do long reach? Did you do that one? In a way, they're making it seem like it's your fault and they think they're trying to help. And then you have people that call to give you the Christian words that have no comfort. They just want to throw it at you and say, I've done my path. And these are things that people that are grieving have to deal with, which we don't talk about so much in Africa. The fact, and they have people that make assumptions about you just because they see you with a child and you don't have a husband and they've gone from 0 to 100. So these are things that you get to deal with. Some of the questions I had to deal with was questions of, did God let me down? Questions of, does God really love me? Questions of how do I reconcile faith and loss? Because for a while, I found it difficult to read my Bible. In fact, I had to change preachers I listened to, because when I listened to a preacher talking about faith and how you get what you want from God, I found myself really, really angry, like saying, so what about those that don't get what they want from God? Are they less Christians? Or when they say things like be blessed and you just say amen, I recalled. So I stopped listening to some certain preachers, not because they were wrong, but because they were not the message what I needed at that time. Okay. And then I had to walk my way into reading my Bible again, walk my way into actually looking for the answers and praying. I realized that sometimes when one is grieving, there's a tendency to want to shut everyone away, to push everyone away, to push God away. So I made a deliberate effort not to, because I realized that, okay, so I have all these questions and I have all these concerns, and the only person who's going to answer these questions, the only person who's going to sort this out for me is the one person that I'm going to push away. So I had to decide that I was going to listen. I was going to find the answers myself and follow the truth wherever it leads. Like one of my favorite preachers would say, follow the truth wherever it leads. So it was a series of working. I think it was until, okay, so this happened in May. I think it was until December that, because every time I came to a milestone, I would pen it down in my diary. Like, okay, so it was until December that I know I penned down a diary entry and I said, it's only this month that I began to feel like I could breathe again. And it's interesting to note that from June to December, I was going to work. I was smiling, So everyone thought I was okay. But I would come back home and I just did not want to talk to anyone. I just, wanted to be on my own. Or I wake up in the morning and cry and get out of bed and go to work. And sometimes, especially for people that are getting into depression, you don't realize that they are struggling because you just assume that they are being so strong, not really realizing that they are trying to just do what they ought to do because people are not comfortable when they are not doing what they ought to do. So it was till December that, through a series of one step at a time, that I came, through so much, and I came to that part and I looked back and said, okay, so the answers, having the answers, it's some of the answers. I won't say I have all the answers, some of the answers. And I think one of the stories that I discovered that resonated with me so much was this story by a Chinese story that talks about a farmer who had lost so much, and he kept saying things like, people told him, okay, this is bad luck, and he said, good or bad, who knows? And and then bad luck will turn to good luck. He will gain so much, and they will say, oh, this is good luck, and he will say, good or bad, who knows? And I said to myself, who knows, this is good or bad? Who really knows? If my life is a story that unfolds, and if my life is like a painting that an artist is painting, how am I supposed to know if the black paint is part of it or if it's a mistake? Okay, and so I'm going to have to learn to take life one day at a time, to enjoy the colors, and trust that somehow when I look back, I would see how everything comes together and how brilliant it is. But if I get upset over a black paint on a canvas of a picture that I don't even know what it's supposed to look like, I'll be stuck on that black paint. I'll be unable to step back and enjoy the full picture, and I'm going to miss out on something that ought to come out of it. And so I made a deliberate effort not to be so stuck at that point where I feel it's all wrong. But I began to look for the miracles, the things I take for granted. The fact that, okay, so my daughter is healthy and she's fine. The fact that she makes me laugh or she says funny things, or the fact that I have friends. I began to look for that thing that I could smile about, that thing that was special to me. But I think in all this, something else I would also talk about. The fact that sometimes when it's happened to you before, one of the things you struggle with is the fact that you feel like it may happen again. I remember after my husband died, like 2-3 months after, my daughter was quite ill. And I said to him, I was telling myself, I was telling God that you can't take her from me again. Like, I have been through so much. And I was talking to a friend of mine, she said, you need to banish that thought from your head. Because it's happened before. And so somehow in your mind, you feel, I've lost someone before. Would God not make me lose someone again? And I think that's what everybody that has been through something struggles with, whether it's a heartbreak, whether it's the death of a child or a miscarriage. It's the fact that this is going to happen again. And it's and their situation is peculiar because faith for them does not come as easy as to those who've never had it before. I mean, I find it difficult to ride a bicycle because I've fallen from one many times. But if you've never fallen from a bicycle, you will just ride it. And we tend to judge people who struggle so much, and we tend to judge them quickly without listening to their story, because everyone is peculiar in the way they deal with their own grief and the way they deal with what bad stuff has happened to them. But it always helps to meet them where they are and to encourage them that by your story that they could choose to trust again even when it's difficult.